Hello guys, this is the Bumblebee 2.0, a Razor MX650 build with a 72-volt 3000-watt Pfeffer brushless motor kit. It is currently powered by four knockoff 40-volt Greenworks batteries. The aim was to create a budget build that I can expand upon in the future. I got this Razor MX650 off of Facebook Marketplace for $300. I could have paid less because of its condition, but it's not the worst value MX650 I've seen on Facebook Marketplace. The images show its condition directly after purchase. It was pretty dirty, so I got to work. These are some disassembly images, like taking out the plastics and removing the old lead-acid batteries that I'm not going to be using anymore. I was curious how fast the stock motor would go, so I hooked up some of the 40-volt Greenworks batteries in parallel, which means that it's higher capacity and current but the same voltage, and connected it to the stock controller, which I also added a shunt to. It pulled around 1200 watts and got to 23 miles an hour with a 15-tooth motor sprocket. 15-tooth motor sprocket increases the top speed by decreasing the gear ratio. I decided that the faded and peeling stickers looked pretty bad, so I peeled them off with the help of a heat gun. I was going to need a large square space for the batteries and electronics, so I cut out the metal bracket that was used to hold the third lead acid battery. This part doesn't really affect the structure, and lots of other people do this when modding Razor MX650s. I needed something to put the Greenworks 40-volt batteries inside of that would protect them from splashes of snow and water, so I made a box out of pop rivets and an old metal shelf I found on the curb. I then painted the box with some gray spray paint, mounted it to the frame with some bolts, washers, and rubber bushings. It was pretty close to the rear shock mount, but it fits and doesn't hit the shock. I made some battery adapters, installed a new sprocket, and replaced the brake pads. New shock install and Fever's 72-volt electronics install. My stock shock was broken, so I decided to get a new one. I got this one off of Amazon for roughly $40. It's a 165mm 750-pound shock. The stock one is a 150mm 650-pound shock. What this means is that the shock that I bought is slightly longer and slightly stiffer, giving us slightly more ride height and more travel overall. The old freewheel was completely seized, so I needed a replacement. I ended up taking one off of an old pocket mod rear wheel assembly from a different project. I also decided to cut the big plastic bits off the back to make it look more sleek. I used a tin snips to cut the plastic and sanded the sharp edges afterwards. I think it turned out pretty well. Whenever I went through small bits of water, it would just splash up onto my back, so I decided to make a rear fender using the same scrap sheet metal I used for the battery box. I also bent a bracket to hold it out of 1-inch steel flat bar. The fender is held on by the motor mount and bracket, so it doesn't rattle around but has enough room to flex when needed. I bought a replacement SX500 wheel directly from Razor.com for $40 using the barcode sheet with all the Razor product codes. I also spray painted the center chrome. Here's the Razor barcode sheet I found. Buying OEM parts directly from the Razor website like wheels or replacement swing arms seems to be much cheaper than Amazon or other sites right now, but some parts require the barcode ID sticker usually located on the bottom of the frame. I was just getting tires and some other stuff like shocks off of Amazon though. 2.5-10 Kenda tires and 2.5-10 tubes with a bent valve stem work well if you're riding an MX650 or SX500 on the street. One thing to note is the MX650's front rim is 12 inches and not 10, so a different tire would be needed. I 3D printed new battery mounts for the batteries and used 10mm copper pipe to make better terminals. I then mounted the mounts directly to the inside of the box to make switching batteries easier. I painted the green SX500 front wheel hub chrome in the middle to match the rest of the bike. I also painted the back rim black to match the front tire. I just haven't gotten to it. I'll probably do it when I replace tires. My gas tank plastic started breaking right there because whenever I have to open up the battery box, I have to push this piece of plastic over to actually get it open. I fixed it with zip ties. I also added the little washer with a spring there so that the plastic has a little bit of play so it doesn't break anymore. I also added this little wired bike computer on the handlebars like this that goes to the front wheel that has a magnet on the hub. I installed a little circuit breaker right there to act as a switch so I'm not spark gapping my batteries. I also installed this little headlight kit with a horn and tail light. I hooked it up so that when the controller is off, the lights turn off, and when it's on, it turns on. This stock Fever controller has this really bad soft start. It makes it so that the ramping speed is really slow. So whenever I pin the throttle like this, it takes forever for it to get up to speed. I plan on upgrading to a better controller later, so this isn't that much of an issue. I decided to put the old front wheel back on because at high speed it was getting death wobbles, which is just super unsafe. I believe this is probably because of a combination of the longer rear shock and smaller front wheel shifting the weight too far forward. Here's the GPS speed app on my phone. It says 44 mile an hour top speed, which is plenty enough for that bike. I'm currently working on installing a new controller and a new battery build for this bike. That's all I have for this video. Hope you enjoyed.